This is Jerry Silva with Fats Grill and Sugar House. You are listening to I Am Salt Lake Podcast. Enjoy.
Welcome to the I Am Salt Lake Podcast, episode 24. I am your host, Chris Hollifield. I am your guide from episode to episode as I lead you through a journey through beautiful Salt Lake City, introducing you to new locals, new professionals, new musicians, just everyday people that are making Salt Lake City just a little bit better to live in and making it the amazing city that it is, seriously. So thank you very much for taking a few minutes out of your day to listen to this episode and get to know somebody new here in Salt Lake City, hopefully. If you haven't been to our website, iamsaltlake.com, that's going to connect you with us. Podcasts, you can download all the previous episodes of the podcast as well as connect with us. Both our email and voicemail is listed on there, and I cannot urge you enough to connect with us. Let us know what you think of the podcast. If you want to be a guest on the show, drop me an email and tell me your story. Chances are I'd love to bring you on the show. This episode is a really awesome episode. I was able to bring Christian Coleman back on to the podcast. If you remember, I had a chance to talk to him in episode 7 about the Hive Gallery. This episode, I was able to bring him back on and talk to him a little bit more about his musical side. We talked about Christian Coleman and the Blue Zen Band, found out about some of his musical influences, kind of how he started musically and his growth as a musician. So it was a really awesome episode. Christian Coleman has been a huge support of the podcast. For those of you following, have known that some of his music, Christian Coleman and the Blue Zen Band, some of his music has been featured here on the podcast, intro music and whatnot. So thank you very much, Christian, for your support of the I Am Salt Lake podcast. Check out his project, Christian Coleman and the Blue Zen Band, as well as the Hive Gallery in Layton Hills Mall. This upcoming Friday, December the 14th, Christian Coleman and the Blues Zen Band is going to be playing at the Garage on Beck Street. Go ahead and check them out. Grab a beer, get some local music, pick up a CD. CDs make, especially from a local musician, make a great holiday gift for that hard-to-find somebody on your Christmas gift. There's no better way to say, hey, you know what? Merry Christmas than with a local musician's CD. So check them out this upcoming Friday at the Garage over there on Beck Street. Follow him on Facebook, as well as Reverb Nation, to find out about any other upcoming shows that he might be performing at. If for some reason you don't have the opportunity to go this upcoming Friday, to check out Christian Coleman and the Blue Zen Band. This is a really fun conversation because he also played some live tracks musically. That way you get a chance to kind of hear what he sounds like. And so anyways, hopefully you enjoy the conversation that I had with him. I'm going to quit rambling for now. Thank you for downloading the I Am Salt Lake Podcast, episode 24. When did you start playing music? What is some of your earliest musical memories?
Well, I was a late bloomer, is the way I see it. I didn't actually really pick up a guitar until I was about 19, and then I had one kicking around for a while. Actually, I had a guitar before that, but about 19 when I learned a chord and learned a riff from a rock and roll song and got this spark of like, wow, I could do this, So I grew up listening to a ton of music, in my household growing up. We had a television, but there was music playing all the time. It was vinyl records and all weekend long, when you were out of school and your folks were doing housework and that kind of thing. It was Bob Dylan records and Willie Nelson records and that kind of thing. And when I was bored as a kid, and back when I was a kid, there wasn't 100 television channels and there wasn't programming for kids all day long and stuff, so like you're homesick from school and there's nothing on TV except for news and soap operas and that kind of thing. Like you're bored, you flip through your parents' records and you look at the album covers and you scan things. So one day I'm flipping through and I discover Led Zeppelin 2 and Led Zeppelin 4 and put those on the turntable and just like epiphany, like, wow.
So these were your parents' records?
Yeah,
then.
Totally.
So they were very, very musically...
They loved music for sure. My mom, totally the Bob Dylan and the Willie Nelson and a bunch of the females, things like Linda Ronstadt that don't influence me that much, or a whole slew of the female artists and stuff like that were big in the 70s, you know what I mean? And then my stepdad was very musical, actually, played acoustic guitar and banjo, and used to hang out at Acoustic Music in its earliest days over on 4th South and 9th East, but never really taught me any chords. I watched him teach himself to play piano from basic piano books, like learning how to play Mary Had a Little Lamb and stuff like that. He'd already been playing guitar and banjo, and he decided he wanted to play our piano. So he picked up the basic books and worked from page one and learned every page of those things to the point where he could actually play the piano pretty good.
So when you started playing the guitar, you said at 19 years old, you didn't play no other instruments before that.
Not
what prompted you? What inspired you or motivated you to say, "Hey, I'm going to pick up a guitar and play it"?
Well, I had it kicking around, and I loved music, and I used to listen to like those Led Zeppelin records and imagine being the drummer or imagine being the singer with all that hair and that kind of thing, but never really had the guts to jump in. It's a weird kind of risk. Like, you wouldn't think you got much to lose, but it also feels kind of, as a kid and growing up, like, you're either an extrovert or maybe you're kind of shy, and I was definitely that shy kid. And so I never really had the guts to delve in. But I used to go to like the music stores, buy a set of strings, learn how to string the guitar, bought a music book of all the crazy things, bought a Guns N' Roses songbook, and learned how to play Crazy.
And was it an acoustic guitar, an electric guitar?
It was an electric guitar.
What kind
it was a super beater, cheap electric guitar, Japanese electric guitar that would barely hold tune.
And were you given it as a gift, or you bought it? Or?
Yeah, my brother's 8 years older than me, and he used to live in Denver, and I would fly there on holidays and stuff to stay with him for a week. And his roommate had a couple of super cheap, junky guitars laying around and gave me one. I think it was pretty obvious that I loved music. Little seeds were planted along the way, even if they didn't realize what seeds they were planting, So his friend gave me a guitar. I took it home. It kicked around for a couple of years. And I, like I said, bought a songbook. And at that point, they were making songbooks a lot easier to learn stuff. They've got what they call tablature instead of with the standard sheet music. A lot easier to learn, one line per string, a number for the fret. I put together one of the riffs, played it for my brother, and he's like, "Oh my God, You're actually playing that thing."
So did you ever take any lessons, or were you all self-taught then?
Not completely self-taught. I took a handful of lessons. I probably took about 6 lessons from a guy who was he was a jazz student at the university and making, some spare cash teaching guitar lessons to kids like me who loved rock and roll on the side. And he got me started. He must have been a good teacher. I can't even remember his name, actually. But he must have been a good teacher because he started teaching me theory, notes and numbers and the math behind it, the language of music. And even with only a handful of lessons, I realized for me that was super important. You know what I mean? Learning the language. There's like a lot of folks, kind of don't advocate lessons and formal training, and they want to basically call themselves self-taught. In my experience, it's really nice when you're trying to play with other people when you can be on the same page with the language. If you're taught, you're trying to explain something or express an idea, and if you know a common language, then it speeds things up a ton instead of trying to figure out how to explain it in a way they'll understand it. And that's what theory has brought into my world,
And you grew up here in Salt Lake.
Yes.
And when did you decide, hey, I want to be in a band? At what point, how old were you when you were in your first band then?
The first time I got on stage was 1991.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Well, see, and I've had 2 sort of parallel tracks in my life because I had an acoustic, and it was weird because I didn't really like the Bob Dylan and the Willie Nelson growing up. I found it to be rather annoying, the music my mother played. But later on, I gravitated to it, and Bob Dylan's probably one of my biggest heroes. So I went and got a harmonica rack and bought some harmonicas and walked around for 2 summers in this city, our beloved Salt Lake City, up in the avenues, going to parties. And I would always wear my harmonica rack when I was walking home late at night, and I'd sit there and blow on the harmonica and basically I'd wear it when I was driving, and just kind of like got hooked on this harmonica thing. So that's the track of playing solo. And I was always kind of bent on learning songs and being able to carry a tune by myself. I figured that was really important. And even if I want to play in a band, it would make me more solid. So I went down that track, but then I also did have the bug to play in a band. And, you know, the earliest, like my first gig with a band was, like I said, 1991. There was a place called Spanky's over on 3rd South.
I remember it very well,
Main
yeah.
and West Temple. Yeah. And they were kind enough to let rookies like me and my friends get up there and play on a weekend night, you know. And so that was probably, I mean, I must have been 21.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because I got in the bar. But I wasn't much older than that. Well, actually, I guess I could do the math, right?
Yeah. Now, when you got on stage, I mean, were you were probably super nervous? I mean,
oh yeah.
But yet you felt, hey, this is home. This is where I belong.
Yeah, and you know that's the thing is with the band context. For me, my experience was that we had already done a ton of rehearsing. You know, like, and I call it rehearsing now. Back then, it was practice, and it was getting a group of guys in a living room and just trying to find out what we've got. And like, you know, I've learned so much about music and about nuance and dynamics and things like that. It was definitely some rookie moments in those first gigs. But we had done a lot of jamming together. We had rented a space and we'd done a lot of stuff, and then we finally got a gig. And having a group of people, essentially, you have each other's backs. It wasn't nearly as intimidating as the first time I got up there and played solo.
When was the first time you ever played solo?
That was a couple years before. Well, actually, I don't know that it was necessarily a couple years before when I think about it, because once again, I had to be 21. It's funny because Ex-Wives Place over on 7th East, I don't know if they have like a really small courtyard that like it used to be fenced off. It's like kind of a back door. And they were doing an open mic for a while, and I haven't heard about them doing that open mic for years. You know what I mean? Like, it's been a long time. I think they probably dropped that almost as fast as they came up with the idea, but I happened to hear about it. And a friend of mine who lived downstairs from me had been playing, he was 10 years older than me probably, and had been playing music for a long time, played in bands. So we go down there, and I get up there to play the first time ever, first live performance of all, solo with the harmonica rack and the guitar. And I didn't even know any songs all the way through. I played a 3-song medley because I couldn't even finish the songs, you know what I mean?
But you got up there and tried at least, right? No.
And my story, that what's hilarious about, I went from start to finish. I didn't finish the songs, but I just segued from song to song because I didn't know all the lyrics and I didn't have a routine yet. My knees knocked so hard, and we walked there from the university area. And my knees knocked so hard that the whole walk home was like, I could feel it was like Charlie horses in my knees, you know. It's just a rookie moment, you know.
From being nervous, I guess?
From being nervous, yeah. I was so nervous that my knees, I was wearing shorts, and my knees literally knocked together on the funny bone. And when we got done and walked home, I was just like, whoa.
So when did the Christian Coleman-Blue Zen Band, when did that come into the picture?
Well, that title and that name has only been around it's been around for a year and a half, actually. I've had the name Blue Zen kicking around quite a while. Over 10 years, I've had the name Blue Zen kicking around. But I've always been playing in other bands. You know, I've had a few other bands, some that I started basically or started with a friend. And when it comes to compromise, you know, everybody needs to agree on a name and all these different kinds of, you know what I mean? And I'm definitely a team player that way, so I never really pushed that title out or anything. So most recently, I got kicked out of one of my bands, and I basically decided to put my project together, you know? I wanted to play my songs that I've written. I've been writing songs for basically that whole 20 years since I got on stage, and I wanted to do a project that expressed my art. You know?
So have you played in any bands that have toured outside of Utah at all, or have you pretty much only played shows here in Utah?
Well, people use the word tour pretty liberally sometimes, but I've definitely played in Wyoming and Idaho and California and not so much Nevada. And, you know, and sometimes playing solo too, so bust out the guitar. I used to live in Austin, Texas. I've lived in Austin, Texas for about 4 years and did some busking down there and open mics. Never did manage to start a band.
I've heard they had an incredible music scene there now.
It is incredible, and it in some ways it depends on what time you were there. Because before my time, it was an incredible blues scene, you know, with the Stevie Ray Vaughns and the Fabulous Thunderbirds and these folks coming out of Austin, and it had this heritage. And even a generation before that, the Johnny Winter and Willie Nelsons of the world came out of there. Like it has huge musical heritage. When I was down there, it was a little more Americana. this sort of kind of alt country Americana thing, which isn't necessarily my style. But there's a lot of opportunity to play. There's an open mic every night of the week. There's a blues jam every night of the week. That, you know what I mean? You can go play on 6th Street and not get hassled by the police. There's a lot of opportunity to play. But it's such an embedded music scene that it takes a little more time to meet people and create something, depending on who you are.
Do you think musicians in Austin tend to get more overlooked than, say, even Salt Lake City?
I guess it would depend on overlooked. The general public of Austin doesn't necessarily overlook their musicians. There's musicians on the news every morning.
Well, I just mean maybe because there's probably so much more of them. You speak of open mics,
sure,
and that kind of thing. So, Salt Lake City, we're a little bit smaller maybe in the music scene, I would think, than Austin. So maybe musicians have more of a chance in Salt Lake.
There's a lot more musicians in Salt Lake juxtaposed against listeners. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot less audience in Salt Lake than there are musicians. Because if you think about it, there's probably half of the population up and down the Wasatch Front that won't go into a bar because of their religion.
True.
You know what I mean?
True.
And and being that the majority of opportunities to play as a musician are in clubs and bars. You've got your summer festivals, you've got celebrations, you've got graduations, all this kind of stuff. But generally, to make a buck, you're either doing a private party or playing in a club.
Do you find that a lot of your fans don't come and maybe see you because you are playing in a bar? Do you find that does hinder any of your fans from actually coming out, or do you think most of the people that enjoy your music will come out regardless?
I would say the fans of my music, because partially, I would say maybe because of the style, being basically a gritty kind of blues, rock and roll kind of thing. They're not, the general idea, the people that love that music aren't too alienated by bars.
Yeah.
No,
I would agree. I would agree. But in general, maybe a lot of people miss out on a lot of music because, like you said, the outlet is bars, and a lot of people hear, I don't want to go into a bar or something like that.
Sure.
Granted, it was nice when the smoking laws changed and all of that, so that made it a little bit for people.
Well, if your religion keeps you from going into a bar, then I think, you're missing out to an extent. But then again, I think that if your religion keeps you from going into a bar, it might also dictate some other aspects of what you like for entertainment, a musician is competing with a lot more than other musicians. In fact, I don't even like to think of myself as competing with other musicians, because if another musician in Salt Lake gets signed to Capitol Records, that benefits me because it gives Salt Lake more credibility on a national and an international level. You know what I'm saying? People still think the only acts that have come out of Salt Lake are the Osmonds and the Tabernacle Choir, And
there's been a lot, actually. The Neon Trees, the Used. There's been some great musicians coming out of Salt Lake. Or
but
not,
I'm just
more
saying,
south
sort
of
of
Salt
a
Lake.
general perception, I've watched it over the years go from, like, before the Olympics, people in other states, and especially on the East Coast and that kind of thing, we're still saying, where's Utah? You know what I mean? Like, we've sort of had this sort of mountain to climb in terms of national credibility that we're getting on our way. And you're right, there's been other acts that have come out here and made some noise, but it's still not that sort of thing where ask me some musicians that came from Nashville, ask me some musicians that came from New York or Seattle or San Francisco. And I'm not knocking Salt Lake in any way, because I think there's a huge amount of talent here. There's a huge amount of talent here that does get overlooked on a national level. And actually, I think it's overlooked by the general public. Not all of them, but like I said, the majority of the people here are still won't go into bars because of their religion, and their entertainment, their television, karaoke, video games, movie theaters, you know what I mean? As a musician and an entertainer, you're competing with so much more than, like I said, other bands. You might consider yourself competing with other bands. I don't.
Yeah.
Like I said, I wish for all of their success because it only helps me in terms of credibility.
What do you think the most challenging, I guess you kind of were talking about some of the challenging things about being a musician in Utah, but just a musician in general, what are some of the most challenging things that you've faced?
Well, I think that I don't even know that I would call it a challenge, but in terms of any creative endeavor and any art form, I think you owe it to yourself to try to be clear about what you want. You know what I mean? And so what I see with other people is when they're not clear about what they want, they just kind of cast their reel out there and don't know what they're going to catch. And I've tried to really hard to focus on what it is I actually want. Now, there's, it's pretty multifolded. Like, I certainly want to be an artist and create and express myself, and that's really important. But I look at it as a business, because what I want to do is travel, and what I want to do is make a living at it. And that stuff doesn't happen by itself unless you're really fortunate. There's obviously outliers and stories that you've heard of. But in general, there's so many people just like me that would love to make a living at music. And so my attitude is take it serious as a business. So what's challenging is getting doors to open. You know what I'm saying? Getting people to listen. You need to be exceptional. You know what I'm saying? You need to be exceptional to get people to gravitate and to care and to support what you do beyond a casual, I happen to be there, I'm listening, I'm enjoying it tonight. And so that exception, the being exceptional has to do with your talent and how hard you work and study at your craft and perfect it, so to speak. And it also has to do with how you network and how you get the word out there, and what I call playing well with the other kids, So, not alienating yourself from, the general populace at large,
You were mentioning an artist a few minutes ago. What do you feel distinguishes an artist from just a musician?
I don't necessarily make a distinction. I notice around me, working in the arts especially, that people seem to delineate a difference between an artist and a musician, but I don't necessarily see that there's a difference. It's just a different medium.
Yeah.
We work with sound instead of working with visual tools and aesthetic, but I kind of take the artistic sentiment and the artistic sensibility serious in any endeavor that I do. If you're going to do something, do it well. So that I don't know that bookkeeping and accounting is necessarily an art. But like I say, if you're going to do something, do it well and do your best at every endeavor you're involved with. And then if you don't like that endeavor, and if it's killing you or driving you nuts or eating away at your soul, then find a way out and get yourself in a position to do what you love. But I tend to take art with a very broad stroke. Ballet's art. They call it performing arts, and I think that there's performing arts and then there's visual arts, and I'm sure there's a few others too. There's the written word, and I consider that to be art too. You're creating something wholly original, and you're trying to move people in a sort of emotional and cathartic way, And sometimes people can explain exactly why it moves them, and sometimes it's very nuanced and they don't even know exactly why they like something, but they do.
The man just wants to play the blues. The man just wants to play the blues. Well, you finds it high, you're bound to lose. I'll sing and play the blues for you. I'll sing and play the blues for you. There's nothing else for me to do.
obviously music is a big part of your life. Where do you think you would be without music? If music would have never been introduced to your life?
I guess the asylum, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, I do remember being a kid, I used to pick up a pen and doodle and draw all the time, and for whatever reason, I wasn't necessarily funneled into that arena, you know what I mean? Like, I probably would have done well to have gone to art school and learned about the tools and about techniques and that kind of thing, and I think I could have been happy doing that. And I think that probably sometimes I wish I would have taken drama in high school too, because I think I could be really happy being some kind of actor and, a performer. I definitely have a performer's soul.
Absolutely.
So,
who are some of your current musical influences? You mentioned some of you mentioned Bob Dylan. Who are some of your other musical influences today? Obviously we change as we grow up, and
well, I tend to accrue musical influences and not necessarily let them go, but add more. You know what I'm saying? So something will be moving me more now, and there's been some stuff that I've listened to for so long that I don't necessarily have to put the record back on today or tomorrow. So in the earliest of my days, I was fortunate enough for my parents, when they realized I was getting into music, they started buying me records that they would want to listen to. Mm-hmm. So I was really fortunate to get a few Beatles albums were my first records. And then I went from this trajectory of I listened to the Beatles every day for years. And then I discovered Led Zeppelin, and I listened to Led Zeppelin every day for years. And then I discovered Deep Purple, and then I listened to Deep Purple every day for years. And so that was a rock thing. But then a friend played me Little Red Rooster by Howlin' Wolf, and a few epiphanies happened. One, I loved it, and it blew me away, and it was much older music, and so it has this rustic quality of how it's recorded, the cracks and the snaps of the recording, and the idea that it was one or two mics pointed in a room because they didn't have the technology, and it was just so old, but it spoke to me. And I also realized in that moment that I'd been listening to the blues all my life, only I just had been kind of wrapped up in a rock and roll aesthetic. When you listen to I would probably think almost every Led Zeppelin album has a heaping load of blues on it. They were just a very adventurous rock and roll band that wrote in other styles too. And the Beatles, when you listen to their first records, they do Chuck Berry and they do soul music, they do Smokey Robinson, and so they were, even that stuff was heavily influenced by what I call American music, and that's basically the understanding. But jazz, blues, rock and roll, soul music, even a little bit of country and that kind of thing. But yeah, to pinpoint it, my solo routine, I call it Bob Dylan meets Muddy Waters, and there's sort of a core of guys. You got your Muddy Waters and your Howlin' Wolf and your John Lee Hooker comprise a very concise start of my influences. These guys are gritty. They're the blues. It's the real deal, the electric blues when it came about, and then there's still the country blues guys like Robert Johnson, which is huge. In fact, most of the guys, they realize it when they're studying the blues, but it's had such a big influence. Robert Johnson alone, a guy and his guitar, but his songs have been performed by so many people. And then, like right now, since I've listened to so much of this stuff for years and years, when I put music on to just kind of not think or to do my other work and that kind of thing, I've been putting on a lot of soul music, So you flip the Pandora on and put it on Wilson Pickett or Otis Redding, and I get
and you're ready to go.
Yeah, totally.
What band or musician do you listen to that people probably wouldn't expect you to listen to? Like a guilty pleasure.
I wouldn't even call it a guilty pleasure, but my gal always laughs because I love the B-52s,
Everybody enjoys some Rock Lobster, right?
Yeah, exactly. and then another one that is, I've never heard anyone cite it as an influence, and it's certainly not a guilty pleasure, but the last new record I bought before I started going backwards, the last new release I bought, and this will date me, but was Living Colour. And I love those guys. I love that band so much. It's rock, but it's, I don't know, it's super heady and intellectual stuff,
Well, great. Hey, let's actually play another song here of yours. I don't know if you want to play a song here for us, and
Absolutely.
what song do you want to play for us here?
Okay, well, one of the traditions when it comes to songwriting that I've noticed in blues songwriting is basically this theme that is, well, you can narrow it down to a song title by Muddy Waters, which is, the song is called Manish Boy, but the line is, I'm a man, a natural born lover's man, M-A-N, man. And so this theme actually runs through American pop music all the way up to the rappers who are like literally thumping their chest and being like, I'm a man, or, it's kind of a look at me sort of aesthetic, So one of the I sort of took that tangent a little bit. This song's called The Real Me. And it's not...
I think I've actually used this on the podcast before,
exactly.
actually.
You've used the electric version of it, so I'll play you the acoustic version of it.
Excellent.
And this is the roots of where it came from. This is how the song was written.
All right, that was excellent. Let's jump right back into the conversation here that we were having a minute ago. And I know we were talking kind of about the music scene. What are your thoughts on the Salt Lake City music scene with the musicians? Supportive and help each other out, or what are your thoughts on the Salt Lake City music scene?
Well, I think that I think I see the glass half empty and half full. I see a lot of musicians who care about each other and do support each other and love what each other do. And I also see the folks that are kind of, single-minded and focusing on what they do. And I don't begrudge that in any way, because I think that that's one of the pathways to success, is keeping your eye on the prize. And when you get busy, you don't end up having much time for anything else. I see it myself. I'd love to get out and see more other bands, but I'm either booked playing or doing my other endeavors, the other work and that kind of stuff. And it just gets more and more difficult to get out and support other people in what they do.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I do, I think that it's probably the same anywhere. That sometimes I really think that the more things change, the more they stay the same. Or when you get out there in the rest of the world, there might be bigger populations, bigger demographics. But yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of the same things. The guy who's playing bass in my band, his name's DJ. He's from New York. He's from Queens and Brooklyn. He played out there a lot. He's played at CBGB's. He's played at some of these clubs that we would consider legendary, with no bands that were famous or anything. But he'll tell you, they've played for less money in New York, and they've played for smaller crowds, And it might be because there's a million bands looking to make it big out there, and there's a million bars. And so if you don't have something special, or you don't let people know you're there, you may not get anybody in the door, I know he's had some really good ones and some really fun ones, and he's had some where he played for 3 people, and they, and didn't make any money, and had 4 bands on the bill in an hour, and so I suspect that it's not necessarily much different all over the country. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Obviously, there's going to be some nuanced differences and that kind of stuff, and there's regional things like style, and you're influenced, we're even influenced by terrain and climate and things like that, like it's different in a place that gets snow half the year and that kind of thing, compared to a place that's temperate and almost tropical or whatever. There's obviously going to be some differences. I'm sure it's different in Alaska.
Let's actually talk a little bit about Christian Coleman and the Blue Zen Band. You're playing Friday, the 14th at the Garage. How did the current lineup of Christian Coleman and the Blue Zen Band come about? How did you guys all meet?
Well, I started the band a year ago with some different people, and for varying reasons, people kind of come and go. The whole idea behind the band was a blues band, but with original music too. But like my whole attitude is that we're like playing out of the blues songbook. It's a traditional blues approach in that we play Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and John Lee Hooker and some Bob Dylan, and play basically the American songbook in terms of blues. I call it blues, boogie, and rock and roll, and yet do original music too, because my favorite musicians, most of them were songwriters as well, And so we started out with an original lineup as a 3-piece, played some good gigs and that kind of stuff, even added a keyboard player at one point. And for varying reasons, people drop away. Either we're getting busier and they've got other projects, and so they have to put their plant their flag in one project or the other, because you start getting conflicts with scheduling and that kind of thing. But anyway, so now we've come around to, we've got DJ Pierno on bass, and we've been playing together off and on in various bands for the last 12 years. We played at Fats Grill about a month and a half ago, and he says to me, I looked at the calendar, and it is 12 years ago to the day that we started playing together. And I was like, right on, that was so cool. So this would be our 4th project that we've worked on together in that 12 years. And he's definitely not my oldest friend, but one of my best oldest friends, if you know what I'm saying. Like we've played so much together that we read each other well, and we know a ton of material together. And so there's DJ on the bass, and then we've got Kevin Gardner on the drums. And Kevin comes from a musical family. His brother plays bass in a variety of bands around town and also does sound. And then Kevin's the house drummer at the Green Pig for the Blues Jam on Monday nights. And he plays at least one other band, if not a couple of other bands. And he's a great blues drummer. I'm sure he does more than that. But the guy knows how to swing, and he knows he's a veteran. So he knows how to read you when it comes time for stops and starts and dynamics and that kind of thing. And he's old school like me, so he knows everything from this classic rock stuff all the way down to some gritty blues.
Awesome. So people coming out to see you for the first time at the garage, it sounds like they're in store for a fun night. I mean, really, just all kinds of you play some covers, some of your original stuff. What is one of your most favorite songs to play live?
Ooh, it varies a lot. We certainly play Boom 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 by John Lee Hooker often enough. And What I Say, you can hear What I Say on the various social network sites and stuff like that. There's a song called 5 Long Years, which is a slow blues song that everybody from Eric Clapton to Buddy Guy have done. There's really just a whole slew of them. I love Trouble, which the first time I saw it was Elvis did it in a movie called King Creole. He's a busboy, and the owner tells him to sing a song, so he jumps up on the bar, and he's like, if you're looking for trouble, And so I guess I'm influenced by everything that's come before me that I've seen and loved too, because I had to play that song.
Excellent. Well, and I know you're heavily involved with the Hive Gallery. That keeps you busy as well as your band. I mean, you play quite a few shows. Seems like quite a few every month that I see. What are some other hobbies and interests? I mean, I might have asked this to you before in the Hive Gallery conversation we had, but what are some other activities that you enjoy doing besides music and art? And
right now there hasn't been much time for other hobbies and activities. You can hear it on the podcast here. We've got our dogs, and love them, and they definitely take a certain amount of our attention on a day-to-day basis, and we'd definitely like to build a home and that kind of thing, a nice place to live and build a good life and stuff. But I don't indulge in too many other hobbies because between the band and the gallery, we stay really busy, and I love it. It's a good problem to have. I'll tell you, I never want to be bored again. I'll take working 7 days a week and 16-hour days over not knowing what to do with myself. You know what I mean?
Tell me about it. Being bored is a word I don't like in my vocabulary.
Exactly. And, if I can find free time, I want to write some songs or read a book to fill the well or even watch some classic movies. You know what I mean? Anything that's artsy to fill that well so that down the road my subconscious is spilling out more ideas for songwriting. And that's my primary form of creativity is writing songs.
Do you have any favorite authors? Any favorite?
Yes, actually. For one, I haven't read her for quite a while, but Emily Dickinson has got to be probably my hands-down favorite of all time. Now, it's poetry and not necessarily what we would call novel writing or whatever, but you got your Emily Dickinson and your Sylvia Plath in terms of poetry. And love the H.G. Wells, even though I've never been big into science fiction, but being the first science fiction writer, give me The Invisible Man or The Time Machine and that stuff. I just ate it up for some reason. And J.D. Salinger. I was thinking about the bass player. But yeah, J.D. Salinger, I've read everything that was available from that guy, and he just passed away recently. If they do dig through his archives and put out some more novels or put out some of that stuff.
Could you imagine?
I can imagine, and I'll be the first in line to buy that stuff, man. I think that he gets knocked a lot. I love that stuff. Franny and Zoe, Raise High, The Roof Beams, Carpenters, and Seymour. That stuff. I was in tears when I read Seymour. They were washing down my face. It resonated somewhere in the heart,
If you could go back in time, would you do it all over again? Would you start with the guitar? Would you pick it up? Would you learn how to play it all over again? Or would you pick up a different instrument? Or any regrets?
I wouldn't even say regrets because, I think I've gotten to a place where I feel very fortunate.
Yeah.
I know that I am super fortunate. Everything from being born in this country and being middle class, basically, you know what I mean? Like when I look around the world and I look around our country and I see people, no matter who you are, there's someone who has it worse,
Yeah.
And so I am really fortunate to work in the arts and to have a rock and roll dream is like the most fortunate thing a person could possibly have, because when you give up on your dreams, you've pretty much got nothing, is the way I see it. And I still have a dream.
Absolutely.
So I am super fortunate. Would I change some things? I'm real hesitant to say yes about anything like that. But yeah, I'd probably give myself some piano lessons so I'd be a better piano player, because I'm still pretty rudimentary, Or would I have had my parents say yes when they said, what instrument do you want to play? And I said drums, and they said, no, what instrument do you want to play? I would have had them just say yes and bought me a kit and been playing drums starting at 13 instead of waiting until I was an adult and getting my own drum set when I had my own place to live. Little nuanced things, but in all seriousness, there's really not much to change. I've been super fortunate. I'm very lucky. I discovered the blues. I found my path.
Absolutely, and you do a heck of a job playing it. Let me tell you what. Seriously, I appreciate everything you've done. I mean, with supporting the podcast, supporting anything I've done between the band and then the Hive Gallery. Seriously, thank you so much. Let's touch base on where people can find any of your music. You mentioned you had a Reverb Nation site. What's the site on that? And I'll link those all on the iamsaltlake.com website as well.
Well, I try to keep everything uniform so that you can basically query the same name and keep things kind of concise that way. So we've got Reverb Nation, and we've got Facebook, and we've got SoundCloud, and we've got YouTube, and there's other databases. I actually should give a plug. If you're particularly into blues, you've got one called Live Blues Tonight, and there's one called Only for Blues. He's European, so his English is a little rough, and so it's called Only for Blues. But anyway, and always you would just query Christian Coleman-Blue Zen Band or Christian Coleman-Blue Zen. Either one of those would work, and that'll draw up the band.
And I'll try to get a ton of links, like I said, on the website so people can get it. So Facebook, that way people can follow you, find out where you're playing next. Because you're also playing an acoustic set you mentioned at Fats on the 20th.
Yeah.
And any other shows besides the Garage? Well, it would be this upcoming Friday, because this will go up on Sunday. So this upcoming Friday at the Garage. Any other bands playing that night?
Nope, just us.
Just you guys?
Yep. When we play the Garage, we play by ourselves. That's the one thing about our band, is that we've got plenty of material. So 4 or 5 hours. We're game,
wow! You're good to go. So. Excellent. Anything else you want to mention that maybe I didn't touch on in the recording? Anybody you want to mention? You mentioned the one that worth checking out. Any bands or anything you want to plug? Feel free to put it on in.
Well, just off, I don't know, I guess I would say that if you're liking what you hear and stuff like that, definitely the Reverb Nation page is a really good place to go, because that's where you can buy CDs, you can get merchandise. But even on top of that, I know it's hard in this economy for everybody. There's free downloads, so you can get some free music. And if you like what you see, become a fan on Reverb Nation or hit like on Facebook, and join the mailing list, and we'll let you know when we're playing. And we're available for any Christmas parties and any, business parties and that kind of thing. And we love what we do. So like I said, we can give you 5 hours of music. We can do all original, or we can do classic blues, boogie, rock and roll tunes.
And I'm sure your CDs make great Christmas gifts too.
Exactly.
I mean, honestly, you're supporting the local economy, you're supporting the local musician.
And that's what I always say, if you keep it local, you're helping feed a local artist, and you're keeping your money in your local economy, and that comes back around, believe it or not. It's like support local, buy local. There's all kinds of people that I can plug. I could say I love playing at Fats. I love playing at the Garage. The Hive Gallery is a big one. Your Wife's Business, Sorry Clementine is huge. The other galleries, the Blonde Grizzlies of the world, support local. Get out there, see a band, go to a gallery and spend $5 on a trinket. Every little bit counts. And like I said, it comes back around. It helps create jobs. It helps sustain jobs.
It's hard to say anybody's doing anything bad in Salt Lake if they're actually trying to do something. I mean, there's a lot of really amazing people in this city.
There's so much talent in this city.
And it goes back, even like you said, spend $5. I mean, that really can make or break somebody's day, and people don't realize it half the time. Well, thank you very much, Christian. I'm going to get all the links at iamsaltlake.com. And check out the Hive Gallery, episode 7, I believe it was, of the podcast, where I talked to you about the Hive Gallery. Check them out in Layton Hills Mall. Christian Coleman and the Blue Zen Band this Friday at the Garage, Fats Grill. Follow if you can't make one of those shows, follow you on Facebook so you can hit up another show, because I'm sure you'll get another one added on soon enough. And thank you very much. Thank you very much, Christian, for taking a few minutes out of your day and sitting down with me and sharing your story with the rest of us here at the I Am Salt Lake podcast. Be sure to connect with Christian Coleman and the Blue Zen Band. I'm going to list all the links at iamsaltlake.com/episode 24. I'm going to connect you with all the show notes. That way you can connect with them on Facebook, Reverb Nation, and all the other outlets to connect and find out when he's going to be coming and playing upcoming shows. Be sure to also check him out this upcoming Friday at the Garage on Beck Street, the 14th. Grab a beer, listen to some local music. If you do like my project that I'm doing here with the I Am Salt Lake podcast, remember to send us an email and tell us what you think. Leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, share us with a friend on Twitter or Facebook, and send me an email, iamsaltlake@gmail.com. Tell me what you think of the show and if you want to be a guest on the show. So until then, I'm going to let you guys all go. I'm going to play one more song from Christian Coleman, You Never Knew. It's one of my favorite songs of his. And until then, I'm going to be back on Wednesday showcasing a new individual or a new professional or somebody else who's just making Salt Lake City just a little bit better. So one more song from Christian Coleman and the Blue Zen Band. You guys have a good night. Thank you very much, Salt Lake City.
Goodbye, she said, with a teardrop in her eye, and it made me cry. I'm on my way, I'm going home. So long, she said, you never knew. Well, I'll miss you. I'm on my way, I'm going home. I've got to try, she said, to quit the race. Well, to find some place. I'm going home. You never knew.